Is it possible to legally protect and own a perfume formula? Let's answer that question today. So I recently received this comment on my YouTube channel that was in response to a video I made of a world specialist who had sort of recreated Cleopatra's perfume. And this person was mentioning that there was a contestant on Dragon's Den UK that was presenting a line of historically informed perfumes. So very likely that this world specialist was probably breaking the law if she didn't have the contracted rights to recreate this perfume. So I actually went to look for this video of the Dragon's Den on YouTube, and it's still available. You can totally find it, and it dates back from a few years ago. But here's the thing. To the best of my knowledge, except for one particular case, you cannot actually protect a formula. There is, however, one exception, which I will get to at the end of this video, so make sure you stick around. And I believe this applies to many different industries, cosmetics, perfumery, and even food. So the way the perfume industry protects their formulas is through secrecy. And it's been like that for quite some time. The difficulty now, however, is that we actually do have technology that can analyze a fragrance and tell us what the proportions and materials that are actually in that fragrance. So in this context, we could pretty much figure out all formulas of every fragrances if we really wanted to. So aside from the vow of secrecy, how do brands protect their fragrances? Well, one way they do it is through trademarking. They'll trademark the name of the fragrance. So in that category, no one else can use that particular name. So for example, Chanel No. 5, no one else can actually use that name. But again, the formula itself is not protected, just the name. Now, just circling back to the concept of secrecy and how historically that has been a pretty good strategy in terms of protecting a fragrance. So let's say I'm a brand owner, and I doesn't necessarily mean that I formulate my own fragrances. So let's say I was acting as a perfume editor and I wanted to release a fragrance. I would contact maybe a larger company like Givaudan to formulate for me. They would create different samples. I would choose the one that I want, but they would always keep the formula on their end. So let's say I wanted to manufacture 2,000 units of fragrances. Well, I would basically be contacting Givaudan and letting them know that I wanted to order 2,000, and they would either take care of it or it would go through just my manufacturer, where I would never see the actual formula. So in this arrangement, I would be contractually binded with Givaudan for every unit that I'm producing. In a way, that's a way they're able to protect the formula and also retain some kind of system of royalty system, if you will. So really the only protection the people who have created the formula have is that secrecy. But there's also the business relation that actually does have a certain value. So me as a perfume editor, if I, kind of crack the code and figured out the formula, if I ran away with that formula and started manufacturing separate from, Givaudan, that probably would create really bad blood and a bad business relationship, which, long-term might not be a good idea. Perfume formulas can also be protected by laws of confidence. So for example, if I signed a non-disclosure agreement with somebody and I'm caught breaking it, I leaked the formula somewhere, I could be liable for that. But of course, the onus would be on the person accusing to prove that I actually leaked that information. So technically, it's not necessarily the formula that's being protected as much as the general data that was supposed to be kept confidential, if that makes sense. But it is a valid way of somewhat protecting it if you're falling into an agreement with another person. Another way of protecting a formula is by using captive molecules. And what I mean by that is, I was talking about Givaudan. Givaudan has access to certain materials that they exclusively are allowed to use. So for example, even if I cracked the code of a certain formula, if there was a material in there that I just don't have access to, then they're really the only ones who could manufacture it. And if you're wondering about copyright laws, that unfortunately cannot protect a recipe of anything. Reason being is that copyright laws just see a listing of ingredients as a functional list which doesn't have any basis for copyrights. So essentially it falls outside of the scope of what copyright laws can do. So here's actually the only way that you can protect a perfume formula, and that is through a patent. But the thing with patents is that to be able to register it, it has to be fully published. The recipe has to be published and made public. And from that point on, everybody knows what the formula is. But then you can have a patent, which in theory says that you are the only one who is allowed to use that formula. But honestly, nobody really wants to go through that path because that actually requires you to publish the entire formula. So that's not necessarily a path that perfume companies want to take because it's kind of like a paradox, right? They're trying to protect a formula, yet they have to fully publish it. It doesn't make much sense, and I actually am unaware of any perfume formulas that have been patented. I'd have to do a little bit of research. So that is as far as my knowledge goes in terms of how to protect a formula. I've only been in the world of perfumery for around 4 years as a new perfumer. But if you have extra nuggets to add that can be helpful, or if I've said anything that was really incorrect, please correct me in the comments.